Alright, we can also find the vertex by using this formula right here. So instead of walking through and writing this equation in vertex form, we can just find the vertex. So if you're just asked to find the vertex and not asked to write the equation in vertex form, you can use this process here, or this formula. Again, this is only if the directions say find the vertex, not if the directions say write in vertex form. When using this formula, we need to know what our A, B, and C values are, and then we can just plug and chug to find the vertex. Let's look at an example. So first we'll define our variables, since those are very important here. A equals -2, B equals -3, and C equals -1. And we're going to plug those values in to the equation from the last page. So we've got, first, we're going to solve for our x value, which is -b over 2a. Then you're going to solve for our y value, which is 4ac minus b squared divided by 4a. And then you can plug those values in and write it as a coordinate. So you're going to write the answer here as a coordinate. Okay? Number 1 is going to go here. Number 2 is going to go here. So, plug and chug. Here, b is -3, so we've got -3 divided by 2 times a, which is -2. Negative and a negative is a +3. 2 times -2 is -4. So our first value is -3/4. We're going to plug that in here. This one's a little bit more complicated, but again, just plug and chug. We've got 4 times a, which is -2, times c, which is -1, minus b squared. So we've got -3 squared, all over 4 times a, which is -2. So to simplify this, we've got 4 times -2 is -8, times -1 is +8. Then we've got minus -3 squared. -3 times -3 is 9. And on the bottom here, we've got 4 times -2, which is -8. So we have 8 minus 9, which is -1, divided by -8, which simplifies to 1/8. All right, and we can plug that in right here. And we've successfully found the vertex using the formula given here. Okay, so on your note card, you're going to want to include that formula right here so that you can really quickly find the vertex. But it's just by plugging values in. Be very, very careful with these negatives and things like that. And when you plug into b squared, make sure you keep that negative sign. There are lots of places where you can make small mistakes here if you're not really careful. Alright, and then at the beginning of this lesson I told you we're also going to be able to find our intercepts. Here we're going to just go ahead and use the regular quadratic form of this equation. The intercepts are where the graph crosses the x and y axis. So if you can imagine our graph right here, and we've got maybe our quadratic equation here. This would be our y-intercept, where the equation crosses the y-axis. As you can see, what we're going to do is, to find that y-intercept, is plug in 0 for x, and then you're going to write your answer as a coordinate point 0, comma y. There's always going to be a single answer for this, because your quadratic graph will always cross the y-axis one time. Okay, and then looking at this graph again, our y-intercepts are right here, or not our y-intercepts, sorry, our x-intercepts are right here and here, where they cross the x-axis. Okay, in order to solve for your x-intercepts, you're going to plug in 0 for y or fx, depending on how the equation's written. Okay, in this equation it's fx. Then you're going to solve for x. You're going to do this by factoring, completing the square, or using the quadratic formula. That should have a parenthesis on the end here. Okay, there's lots of different ways that you can solve for x that we've learned in many of the lessons recently and in previous units. And then you're going to write your final answer as coordinate points. You might have 0, 1, or 2 answers in this case. Okay, in this graph shown here, obviously we have 2 x-intercepts, but you can imagine that if we had a graph that looked like this, we would have 0 x-intercepts because we never cross the x-axis. Or we could have a graph that looks like this, where we only have 1 x-intercept. All of these are possibilities, okay? So, and we will find all of these answers by doing one of these 3 things: factoring, completing the square, or using the quadratic formula. All right, so finding y-intercepts, really simple, so we're going to start with that. It says plug in 0 for x. Okay, so here's 1x, so we have fx, which is the same as y, right, equals -2 times 0 squared, because we plugged in for this x, and we're going to plug in 0 for this x as well. 0 squared is 0 times -2 equals 0. -3 times 0 is 0. And then we've got -1. So when you plug that in, you find out that y equals -1. So our y-intercept is going to be, if we use this form right here, 0, comma, -1. That would be your answer. 1s to find the y-intercept. So nice and simple. Finding x-intercepts is a little bit more difficult, but not too bad, especially when we can use the quadratic equation. Okay, so if we go back here, the directions say plug in 0 for y or fx. So instead of fx, we're going to have 0 equals -2x squared minus 3x minus 1. This should look very familiar whenever we are solving using the quadratic formula. We need our equation to be set equal to 0, and we're going to define our variables. A equals -2, B equals -3, and C equals -1. And then we're just going to plug these into the quadratic formula, which should also be on your note cards. The quadratic formula is x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And we're just going to plug these values in to solve for x. So we get -3 plus or minus the square root of -3 squared minus 4 times a, which is -2, times c, which is -1, divided by 2 times a, which is -2. Simplifying this, we get x equals, a negative is positive, so we get 3 plus or minus Negative 3 squared is 9, minus, and we have negative 4 times negative 2, which is positive 8, times negative 1 is negative 8, so we have minus 8, divided by 2 times negative 2, negative 4. We can't leave our answer like this, we must simplify. We're going to start by doing 9 minus 8, so we get 3 plus or minus the square root of 1 divided by negative 4. The square root of 1 is just 1, so we can rewrite this as 3 plus or minus 1 divided by negative 4. Remember, when we have this plus or minus right here, this is actually two answers. So we can rewrite this as 3 plus 1 over negative 4 and 3 minus 1 over negative 4. 3 plus 1 is 4 divided by negative 4. That equals negative 1. There's one of our x values. Okay, remember x equals. And then we've got 3 minus 1, which is 2, over negative 4, simplified as negative 1/2. And there's our other x value. So then our third step is to rewrite this in coordinate form. So we get negative 1, 0, and negative 1/2, 0. Those are our two answers. And remember, this can be, we can have 0, 1, or 2 answers for our x-intercepts. In this case, we have 2. So that's it for this lesson. In this lesson, you learned how to find the vertex, the y-intercepts, the x-intercepts, and also how to write the quadratic equation in vertex form. You're all set to try your homework.